And welcome back to JKLIVE Live here at Citizen Television. Angela Ambitho, founder, CEO, InfoTrack in the house, as is Samuel Modoka, Director of Public Affairs at Ipsos. We're talking numbers. We're talking science. We're talking, well, opinion polls.
Jeff, why aren't you telling them that Kenya is going to be the president designate with my good self
Go on.
of the World Association of Polling? Majaluo, give me. It's not fair.
But do you say?
What do I say?
No, you just whisper loudly.
Of course, WARPO.
Okay, what does that mean?
WARPO, which he will be a member. I will be his president.
WARPO is the largest polling organization in the world. So it's an umbrella body of all pollsters in the world. And WARPO has invited Kenya to be the chairman.
Is that a big deal? Is that...
It's a serious deal,
It's a
Jeff.
very big
It's a very serious deal. Because we bring the world back to Kenya. We bring the world here to ourselves. And this will be launched in Dubai.
Correct.
In
November.
In November.
Yes.
Congratulations, Angela. Madam President.
You better recognize.
Mtarajiwa, incoming president.
They voted for me.
Well done.
It was scientific.
Okay, speaking of science, Sakaja defies science for me because, okay, he was in the news for all the wrong reasons the last couple of weeks, but the latest poll says he's still ahead. Explain that to me, please.
You know, elections normally are motivated by a couple of things. One is generally the desire for improving the status quo. So you've had a specific, government in place or politician in place, and you either want to continue with that politician because their representation is endearing to you, or it can be a referendum against the status quo. So in the case of Sakaja, if indeed he is leading, if indeed I say, because I don't know what the methodology was, but if indeed he's still leading, then it could be that it's a referendum. Maybe it is anger with the way they believe a young person has been treated. That's one. Secondly, there is a front-runner advantage, always. For a long time, we would see when the polls were being released, I don't think we weren't doing any because it wasn't an election period last year. We would see that William Ruto was always ahead, but nobody else had declared. Nobody else was really out there endearing themselves to the public. So you have the front-runner advantage. For a long time, Sakaja had that advantage here because indeed it was just him. And then, Tim Wanyonyi came in and then left the scene. And now we have Polycarp Igathe, who, by the way, was my classmate at University of Nairobi. Yes, so Polycarp and I are alumni. I think that would be the two things. One can be a referendum. Even most elections are referendums against something. When Trump won in the US, it was a referendum against what they felt was, promises that perhaps didn't work for the conservatives. And same thing with the current UK Prime Minister, whose name I forget right now.
Boris Johnson.
Boris Johnson. Yes. It was a referendum against the lady.
Yeah.
But here as well, what are the key issues? High cost of living, unemployment, infrastructure and development, and then governance, which encompasses corruption. So when sometimes you hear pundits say corruption is not going to be an issue, of course it's going to be an issue, and Kenya understand that. But you deal with first things first, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If I'm hungry, I don't care how you're going to put that food into my stomach. So the first thing is tell me how you're going to deal with all the things that, are afflicting me right now. And I think the fact that those issues perhaps are being discussed in specific way by specific candidates may endear them more, and maybe Sakaja's way of discussing those things in a very simple way. I saw him even, playing in a band. And doing things very naturally.
Yeah, but Polycarp did the same thing. He was in kiosks, he was serving people.
Polycarp has been everywhere.
Samuel, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I want to twist my response, not necessarily to Sakaja, but to what I would call brand health, the journey to a brand health. Remember, our politicians are brands.
Yeah.
And again, back to science, for a brand to gain, there are quite a number of steps that it must go through. And the first step, which is always very, very important, we call it awareness.
Yeah.
Okay. So for a brand to gain any significance, it has to create awareness, the traction of awareness. So the moment people know you, then they can try you. Trial is that aspect of somebody, I know you. Could this be the brand that I've been looking out for? And then after they try you and then they like you, they adopt you. And then they love you and then they retain you. And for you to gain that, there's an aspect of time.
Right.
So looking at, and this is what Angela said, the time factor that somebody has been in the forefront of, people know you, so you can actually gain a lot of mileage by actually people knowing you, and then you get established in their minds and that. And then also there's an aspect of speaking into our issues. When somebody speaks into our issues, because what pains the youth, what pains the population, what pains whichever segment of the community, whoever it is, speaking into that, you endear yourself into an electorate, into a group. So that could happen to whichever other politician who is seeking an electorate, electoral position, right, by having an advantage of the time they are very much well aware of. People are aware about them. They have already convinced, they have managed to convince. You have an undue advantage against somebody who has come much later, and who people could still be attempting or trying to know or to appreciate or to understand.
There are some people, though, and tell me if I'm wrong or not, some people who start believing their own hype. They think they're so popular, they think, the people love them.
Numbers don't lie.
Numbers don't lie, but that self-belief, especially from politicians, is a double-edged sword. Having worked and dealt with them for the last 15 years, I can tell you that, Jeff, politicians are what they are because they believe in their brand, which is indeed themselves. If many of us did that, I think we would fly and achieve so much. I wish our youth would, and women, or disadvantaged groups would believe in themselves the way our politicians do. Because you sometimes can see you're not that great. This guy is talking like he is a magician.
Yeah.
He can deal with everything because he has actually psyched himself that way. So that is positive, because then when you believe in yourself, you can make others believe in you. But the flip side of it is that indeed it can make you live in, this really misgived or misdirected grandiosity, delusions of grandeur, as it was once referred to. I tell you, once we did a study for a specific politician, paid for poll, and this guy, this was 2013, this guy was extremely popular on Twitter. Everybody was talking about it. He was good looking, suave, etc., etc. But when we did the qua ground, things were so different.
Yeah.
It was not getting to 2%. And so this guy got really angry. And he said, you know what? I can't believe this. I said, this is what it is. Social media is social media.
Yeah.
But you're not going to be a social media president.
Right.
You're going to be a president of every single Kenyan. Now, there are Kenyans in Mandera and there are Kenyans in my backyard of Uyoma, Katuenga, who do not have internet.
Right.
They are not on Twitter.
And they've never heard of people.
And they've never heard of... I didn't say that. I didn't say those.
You didn't have to.
Yeah,
you didn't have to. But like Samuel said, Polisana Piquet. But you're saying, Samuel, numbers don't lie.
Numbers don't lie. And I think there's a mirage, you know, when people see the numbers coming on social media and they're big and they believe.
Yeah.
Do you know the population, the proportion of the population that are on social media in the first place? And since when would you take that to be like a representative sample of the electorate, of the, you know, of the target that you are aiming? I think that's a mirage. So you look at it, you believe it, and then it enters, you know, the premium tiers.
And you know what else,
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Aki, do you know that there was a poll that was done on social media by one of the bloggers that said, me, Angela, I was the second most hated woman in Kenya.
After who?
After Bensouda. Fatu Bensouda.
Who's not even
then
Kenyan.
Me, then Gladwell Otieno.
What?
But you know how these social media polls are. And one professor actually was very concerned. A professor came and said to me, my dear girl, take things easy. You know, people don't like the work you're doing. I said, Professor, do you know how this poll was conducted? Where's the methodology? Because in a social media poll, what happens is I, Angela, or you, Sam, or you, Jeff, can vote 20 times.
Correct.
So it takes 5 people to make you the most unpopular show, Jeff.
Just 5 people.
Aki walai. I was the second most hated after Fatu. I was like, dear Lord.
By the way, it brings me to my
Thank
next...
God it's not scientific.
Do you feel that your job is a danger sometimes?
My mother does.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I don't. I don't because, Jeff, somebody's got to do it. And having been born and raised in Nairobi, having lived most of my life here, I strongly believe that people have the right to know. Just like your show does. People have the right to know.
Correct.
Now, if I don't do it, if Sam doesn't do it, if Jeff Koinange doesn't do it, then who will give this 22 million voters the information they need to make the decisions come August 9th?
Yeah. Sam, you agree?
I think, Jeff, this is a very important conversation because we need to bring our people, our countrymen, our fellow citizens to appreciate the importance of data in making decisions. And in the absence of anything, any simple data that you have can make a big difference. Political opinion data has been used globally in major ways. Yeah. And us appreciating that this data can also help in our democratization process. It can so much help in our democratization process. And we need to accept that. We need to live with it. We need to embrace it because that is a way towards development. And because we are contributing so much, number one, towards the economy of the country, we're also contributing towards advancing knowledge, informing the society. I think there's every good reason to do it.
Yeah.
We're not paid to malign, but there's every good intention and every good reason to do it.
Okay, let me ask you another question. How do you stay objective?
Yeah.
For instance, you do a poll on certain, let's say this 2013 candidate, and, you know, he was likable. He is, you know, he was everything that social media said he was, but not on the ground. How do you stay objective?
We're professionals. You stick to the science and you stick to the protocols that dictate what it is that we do. Our job is very simple. Is to tell you what the situation is based on the research problem and the objectives at hand. Now, that doesn't mean that we will always like what we see. Indeed, many a times when I look at our own opinion polls, I disagree with them. But my job is only to tell you, Jeff, and report that this is candidate A is at this, candidate B is at that, etc., etc. I may not be happy with it, but it is the fact. And it also doesn't mean that the populace is right.
Right.
So indeed, we have seen many a time where the respondents who represent a particular population saying they would vote for X, even if X is not, and you know, because you report it to us, and you say this person has this court case. This person has stolen this amount of money. But the populace is still saying that this is a person we'll vote for. We saw the same quagmire in the US, where people were saying, it's unbelievable that people could do this, but the motivations that people have when they're making decisions on everything, including relationships. When somebody decides to marry a specific person, the person you decided to marry, there are people who said, we don't understand Jeff. And this is hypothetical. Mrs. Jeff. This is hypothetical. This is not a real case.
It's not
I
real
don't know. But this is the case. Yeah. The things that make us make our decisions in terms of our psychographics, our belief system, our culture, are things that we just have to appreciate and accept. It is after we churn out those numbers then that the sociologists, the political scientists and behavioral scientists come in, because our job is to establish the fact. And then the behavioral scientists that we work with, who also work with us, then ask the question, why? Yeah. Why is Sakaja still popular, as you're saying? The number cruncher will tell you he is, or he's not. Right. And then the behavioral scientists within our institutions will say, we are going to do qualitative research. We're going to immerse ourselves into this environment and understand what it is people are saying and why they're doing what they do. And then we also contextualize it and give that information to clients and say, the numbers have established this, and this is why. This is why things are going this particular direction. So the whys are now, established using qualitative research, right, where you sit with people around a table and you sit the way we're sitting. Yeah. We keep asking, using laddering technique in questioning, where we just say, so you said that, why? Why would you vote for this guy? But he's having this issue. Does it not bother you? No, it doesn't bother me. Why doesn't it bother you? Well, I think maybe I feel sorry for him. Or I've always liked this guy. Right. He represents who I am. So there are very many things that could be driving the decisions that you're asking us. But right now, as we sit here, just like the pundits you put on your bench, it is pure postulation and speculation. It's an educated guess. Now, until you get the behavioral scientist who actually goes and sits with the people, again, who represent that particular subset, as Sam has mentioned, can you establish it as more of a fact?
I see. Sam, you were saying...
Just to add on something to that, Jeff, every profession that is well organized has a set of rules that guide the game. And for example, if I take you to medicine, if a medic arose and became a rogue and they were doing things outside the process, the Kenya Medical and Practitioners Union would be very hard on this one person. Yeah. We are part of a profession that is organized. In fact, we have the organization we call the MSRA, the Marketing and Social Research Association. By virtue of being members, we subscribe to a common creed, to a common quality standard and a particular way of doing things. And we hold each other accountable. We check into each other's work. And anybody who is not subscribing to that, then, of course, we have no responsibility about whatever they could say out there. So simply because of that, that gives us a level of credibility. And I would say, just like every other profession, the fact that we are bound together and we are over 15 pollsters or research organizations in that Marketing and Social Research Association. So by being members there, then it actually gives us a level of, credibility in whatever we do. We are organized. We are not just out there to, do things that could easily be settled, the calmness.
Yeah, I think this brings me to a question by the very Reverend Canon Sammy Wainaina of All Saints Cathedral. The very Reverend. He says, one question, are polls truly independent? Can they be trusted?
They are independent. They are independent in the sense that when I can probably say this certainly for ourselves. I would want to say it for all the kosher pollsters. When you see us come out and release a poll and say this is an InfoTrack poll, an Ipsos poll, etc., it is because we don't want anyone influencing that poll. We are not PR agencies. Our job is not to do publicity for different organizations and personalities. So what happens is we invest in those questions so that we have the luxury to call Jeff, to call Joe Ageo, who has moved to Nation, etc., and say, come for our press conference. We are releasing our poll. How do we do this? We do this through a vehicle called an omnibus. So in an omnibus, you say, for instance, in the one that we last did, we say we're going to 47 counties. It's not going to be cheap, but we want to own 4 questions. The first one is, who is intention to vote? Do you intend to vote? What are the key issues? And then, who will you vote for? And which political party or alliance do you espouse to or do you feel close to? Those 4 questions will cost us X. But we want to enjoy from economies of scale, Canon. So what do we then do? We then say to different clients, including media houses, including even the Anglican Church, wherever, we're going out to do a governance omnibus. Because you don't want to be saying to people, what soda are you drinking? At the same time, you're asking them, what key issue afflicts you today? So you make it as homogeneous as possible, so it's only dealing with governance issues. Each client who then buys a question pays a specific amount. So indeed, if it is 47 counties, one question could cost between 50 to 150,000, depending on how it is structured, okay? And you then will have the amount of money, you know how much it's going to cost you to do the 9,047 counties, of which InfoTrack owns 4 questions. So when people, it's not cheap to do research, but those 4 questions then become our investment, because just like Sam said, people are brands, the pollster indeed also has to be a brand, and if you want to be a respected brand, you have to have your independence. How do you protect this independence? Is by doing your own poll, not one that Jeff will tell you how to release or Sam will tell you what to say and what not to say. So if you want to have that leeway to say whatever it is you want to say, you have to invest in that poll yourself. And we do so through this tool or this product we call Omnibus.
Tell me something, Sam. For the most time, the polls that you guys do, let's say you say candidate X is leading with 42%, and candidate Y is at 40%, let's say. And in the end, it turns out wrong. And again, your science doesn't always work, or what's the deal?
So, like I did mention, Jeff, voter intention is a moving intention. So there is a break point at which we would really say that things are stabilized. But globally, all over, we've seen a lot of level of inconsistency where what was predicted in the first and what turned out are different. But in the first place, I would ask you, is the electoral process itself flawless, such that it would not create inconsistencies that could exactly go against the poll itself?
Right.
Because when you do a poll, it is very objective. You use all the rules that are set for the game, but then the boys behind the scenes.
you know, Jeff
is that something called the deep something? Is that
whatever it is?
We don't know.
Whatever
we don't know what deep you're talking about.
Whatever may happen behind the scenes,
yes,
will
it's
completely bring different results. But then it's very easy to come back to the pollster and say, you know,
you were wrong.
And Jeff, just to illustrate what Sam is saying, so people say this and say, oh, but this pollsters is bure kabisa.
Yeah.
Bure. So if we are bure, then remember that 2007 was also bure. Because it was contested to the point that it changed the direction that the country took to the point that we, you know, ushered in a new constitution, correct? So we did 2007, so did you guys. Yeah. And so we can leave that. Can we call it history? Because Kriegler said, we don't know. We don't know who won. Then we did 2013. We all indicated specific things. It was contested. Mm-hmm. Let's back 2013 because indeed, even after it being contested, the Supreme Court made a ruling. Now, how do you indict us for 2017, Jeff? Do you know who won? Do you know who won the 2017 election? Because has the server ever been open?
No.
Exactly. So now you want to blame Angela. You want to blame Sam. You want to say...
your fault.
You people
you
always show nothing you ever say is true. We're not magicians. We're scientists.
And on that scientific note, let's go straight to the magic wall. I like the way you answered that, Angela. That's very true. The servers are still to be open. Wow, lots of tweets coming in thick and fast. Okelo Bwalimu says, ask the two pollsters, one, have they ever received calls from politicians directing them to release poll results in any particular format? Angela?
We've had politicians requesting. You can only request when you're not paying. You said it.
Yes.
So, yeah, they ask us.
All the time.
You can't direct me when you don't pay me. And even if you did pay me, my job is to give you the truth. So, yeah, they ask.
Sam, you agree?
No, I have had, experience of conducting a nationwide poll, releasing it. But I've never had a politician requesting me to release particular numbers in any particular way. Mm-hmm. Neither do I have any history of that in our organization.
Sam is young.
Maybe.
He's yet to see things. People call you and they say, weka hivi, tafadhali, but they ask you nicely because they don't own your poll. So they say, I mean, the other day Jeff, I told you I've just come from the field.
Yes.
And when I took my rosary, and I said, please bless my rosary, my father, one of the fathers in the field said in jest, weka huyu kwa 60% next time in your poll.
The father in the Catholic Church. Martin Moraga says, my question to Angela is whether past voter turnouts are factored in your polls. Past voter turnouts.
When we're doing predictive polling, yes. If you recall, I think we are the only ones who have done a predictive poll and accurately predicted a result in the referendum. Infotrack did. Yeah. And in that one, we did a lot of, analysis in terms of what voter turnout would be. But that's because we had done many consistent polls on intention to vote. Because the electoral numbers have been so up and down in terms of our elections since 2003, it's very difficult to use because there are so many different dynamics in play. Sure. But certainly, last election, we had a voter turnout of 78%. Our thinking is that it would probably be around that.
This time around?
Yeah.
Yeah? There's not much, people will talk about voter apathy, yeah?
Voter apathy, I think, affected the registration of new voters. So we didn't get as many new voters as we anticipated to get, and most of those were young voters.
Correct.
But those who have been there, you know, the institutionalized voters like me and you, we're going to vote.
We're going to vote.
Yeah.
Here's a question for both of you from BDS Eco. Says, were the running mates critical in the popularity of the top candidates? Sam, you go first.
My guess in this is correct. A running mate is a very important, and remember the way our politics are organized in this country, we are kind of regionalized, you know. So the choice of a running mate, because it's a strong person who supports the lead candidate, how strong they come in, then that could be an influence. That could easily be an influence. And remember we said, this is something that runs almost until the last day. So there are still voters who will make up a decision based on the choice of the running mate. They could easily accept or drop an intention simply because of what they think has happened.
Right.
Yeah.
Angela, you agree?
And I think I agree. And I think, why do you bring in a running mate? You bring in elections about numbers. So you're picking the person who you can have proper chemistry with. And I think one of the running mates said that someone who will appreciate that there will be a head and there will be an assistant. That's point number one. So you have that chemistry, or there's a likelihood of chemistry. But secondly, you have to bring in someone who will help you attract and consolidate your numbers.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah. So then, of course, it changes. The choice of running mate is meant to change your numbers for the better.
Are the people voting for the running mate, or are they voting for the ticket itself? Or they put that into consideration?
They will be voting for the ticket because the ticket is a duo. And so the running mate becomes a critical facet if you look at it from the perspective that the running mate is bringing in their own numbers as well.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Engineer Leakey wants to know, and I'll just summarize this, are your opinion polls credible and reliable? How do you ensure this, Sam?
So number one, there is the rules that guide sampling. The rules that guide sampling. Population proportionate sampling is a global best practice. So when it is applied per the rule, and then when you apply the margins of error that are acceptable, and then when you give everybody at the level that you are sampling an equal chance of being selected, then that is science. That is a reliable process.
Right.
And you expect that the results that you obtain at the end of the process represent or can be generalized to the wider population. But most importantly, you must declare, you must specify, this is the methodology, these are the limitations, because you can only interpret those results on the basis of those limitations. And that makes it...
I think, Sam, one of the problems we're having now, and I appreciate the question that's been asked about credibility, is indeed the last point that you mentioned. It is mandatory for every research agency, for every research report and every poll to stipulate its methodology. It's a must to stipulate your sampling and your sampling protocol. It's a must to stipulate what you achieved vis-a-vis what you intended to achieve in terms of sample. So if those things are missing from any poll that you see, then question the credibility.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Which brings me to, I guess, a good segue to Woz Nyanju Oziani. He says, the problem with pollsters is the framing of the questions. For instance, they ask a close-ended question like, whom between Raila and Ruto would you vote for? So where does that leave Ojakoya?
We never ask that.
No, we never ask that question.
We ask a very simple question on voting. The intention to vote question
is what? Who will you vote for?
Is a globally appreciated and asked question, which is, assuming elections were held today, who would you vote for as your presidential candidate? And you leave it to them. You don't give them any names. You only would do so if it is indeed a two-horse race established. So you only have two candidates.
What if it's obvious? Yes.
Yeah, but as of now, and until the elections are held, it would be very unfair and it would be biased if you, that would be, indeed he's right, that would be a biased question. You have 4 tickets, you must allow for the 4 tickets. So if there are 4, and if you want to be fair and you want to mention them because you want to create the awareness, then you may have to mention all 4. But the way we ask the questions now is we leave it open and
Sam,
we just let them answer.
Sam, you were saying?
No. I agree fully with what she said. The question is framed, and you would find that that question is used across all the polling agencies. They use that one question. You leave it open-ended.
So we don't leave out Wajakoya.
He's not left out.
Okay. Esau Busiega says, do you do phone call interviews for the political opinion polls? And if so, where do you get the respondents' phone numbers? Right.
So Sam has been very clever. He's avoided that one because he said he's only doing the archaic face-to-face. We are doing the CATI, which is a computer-assisted telephone interviews. And the way the computer-assisted telephone interviews work is that you start off by building your database over a specific period of time using that traditional face-to-face method. Okay, so every time you go out into the field, one of the things you do is you collect the demographics of your respondents. And from those demographics, one of the things that we always collect is the telephone numbers. Why do we do this? Because those telephone numbers are often used to do the back-checking. So there are quality controls that we do in research, which is that once the enumerator has gone to, interview the respondent, then 20-odd% of the interviews are back-checked. They're back-checked physically by a coordinator or supervisor going back and doing a back-check. And they're also nowadays, back-checked using the telephones. And if the person gives permission to you, then you will include them in a database. That database can either be a database that can be randomly used, or it can be a panel. So you can ask them whether they want to be part of a panel, or that you can contact them again. So you build it over time, you build it over years, and you use that. Here in Kenya, we do that. There are also institutions, I believe, here in Kenya who sell databases. So they have done that already, and you can then go and buy those databases from them. Yeah.
We're conducting our own poll here at Citizen TV, and we're asking, do all posters wear purple?
What's your sample?
What's your sample?
And which... Tell us your methodology.
Yeah. I like that. Angela Mbitho, founder, CEO, InfoTrack, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And of course, Samuel Muthoka from Ipsos, we look forward to your polls, to your latest poll. And good luck, and thank you so much for sharing that information with us. It's been fantastic.
Thank you.
And thank you for being a part of JKLIVE. You know, Wednesdays, it's all about those 3 letters on the keyboard that follow each other. JKL, powered by M-Pesa Global Pay, folks. You can now make global payments using funds in your M-Pesa. And it's very easy, folks. It's very easy to do. Check this out. All you need to do is download the M-Pesa app from your Google Play Store, App Store, then select Grow, then activate your virtual card. And just like that, the world is yours with M-Pesa Global Pay Card. You can make payments securely for goods and services on global e-commerce websites, pay for travel on global websites, and pay for international video streaming services. So download the app right now from your Google Play Store, App Store, or you can simply dial *334#, select Lipa na M-Pesa, and select Global Play. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Thanks so much for being a part of JKL, folks. We'll see you next week, same time, same place. Good night, good luck. God bless you all.